Hey there, I'm TrackerTD, and you may know me from such hits as every other video on this channel. The year is finally at its end, and what a wonderful year it's been, rife with disease and the collapse of society and also various sectors of capitalism as we know it, and... wait, no, hang on, I think I've got the wrong script here. Anyway, it's time for me to tell you what video games I played this year. Again. Last year, I switched up the format a bit and made my Game of the Year list out of games I'd played for the first time that year, regardless of whether they actually released within it. That was because I barely played any new games that year, and it also allowed me to paint a more accurate picture of my gaming habits. As such, I'm keeping that format this year, but there's a catch. Unlike last year, I actually played a ton of new games in 2020, and so capturing all the good stuff I played in total in one top 5 is impossible. So buckle in folks, because it's time for a double feature. That's right, it's time for a full-on, no-holds-barred top 10 list. Here's the 10 best games I played in 2020, with some extra honourable mentions thrown in here and there. I spent a fair amount of time this year catching up on Ryuga Gotoku Studio games that I'd missed, including buying the Yakuza Remastered collection just in time for them to announce a PC port. Bollocks. However, there's one game from the studio that still eludes Steam, and that's Judgment. Switching away from Kazuma Kiryu, Judgment is a spin-off title. You're still in Kamurocho, but now you control lawyer-turned-private detective Takeyuki Yagami in his quest to uncover the truth behind a string of grisly murders. It's immediately engrossing, and they did a superb job creating a fresh cast of new faces for Yagami to bounce off. Kaito is bloody fantastic. As always, they sell the antagonists tremendously well, and you really grow to hate these bastards over the course of the game, making it all the more satisfying of course when you get to beat them senseless. I also appreciate the attempts to change up the gameplay in tandem with the premise. Crime scene investigations, chase scenes a la Dynamite Decker, it's generally interesting stuff, and some of it even carried over to the latest Yakuza title. It's not all solid admittedly. The game's performance on PS4 is the main reason I was holding out for a PC port for so long, and the numerous stealth sections can be somewhat of a drag. The combat's also not quite as refined as the mainline Yakuza titles, though I still found it perfectly solid. On the whole though, the game kept me engaged throughout, and I think the storyline is one of Negoshi's finest yet. The cast do a superb job, and that includes the replacement for Pierre Taki's depiction of Homura. Look, I think what happened to Taki was a load of shite and a severe overreaction, but the replacement honestly does a better job portraying the kind of character Homura is. If you haven't had a chance to play Judgment yet, I think it's definitely worth a shot for the Yakuza faithful. I do still hold out hope that it comes to PC after the Remastered Collection and Yakuza 6, because the game's shoddy performance is one of its main issues, honestly. The first retro entry on this list asks an important question. Are giant transforming robots and dating sims a good combination? The answer is a very clear yes then, if Bulk Slash is anything to go by, because it's one of the best games I've played on the Sega Saturn. Bulk Slash is an action game in which you pilot a big mech that turns into a jet and fly around destroying targets with your machine guns. It blends 2D sprites and 3D geometry in a fairly novel way, and it also makes great use of the Saturn pad control-wise. This can make it daunting for new players or outright baffling for those emulating it on a modern pad, but when it clicks, it feels great. As mentioned, the game also tries to blend in dating simulator elements, bizarrely enough. In each level you can find a navigator who you can talk to and request the assistance of, but you're not just working with them, you're trying to woo them. It's a very loose dating sim element, and all it really amounts to is you get a different ending depending on the navigator and a different piece of art for them depending on your score, but this works perfectly fine as it means the dating element isn't intrusive and simply encourages replayability. There's also variety across the game itself. One moment you'll be trying to destroy bombs across a city, then you'll be fighting through the only actually decent escort mission in all of video game history, or planting your own bombs to take down a fleet of spaceships, and so forth. There's always an intimidating boss fight at the end of each mission too, and these can be simply epic in scale. Considering the Saturn's limitations when it comes to 3D titles, Bulk Slash is a pretty gorgeous looking game, particularly the second level. The variety of environments you'll fight across all look superb, and while we're talking presentation, special mention has to go to the intro cinematic. It's blood pumping as anything, and the music. Oh man, the music. If you've got the means to, you owe it to yourself to check out Bulk Slash. Sadly, an actual copy of the game is not exactly cheap nowadays, and as good as it is, I can't say I'd actually recommend you pay £300 just to play it. Speaking of mechs and dating sims, Sakura Wars is one of those Sega series I just never got around to, largely because so much of it was only available in Japan. That, and visual novels aren't especially my bag, even less so when combined with real-time strategy. That said, the series made a triumphant return in Japan last year, and this year, Sega actually localised it. And since the real-time strategy had been cut out in favour of hack and slash action, I figured now was probably as good a time as ever to check out yet another Sega IP. So in short, Sakura Wars is pretty great. It's welcoming to newcomers while providing plenty for long-time fans to point and grin at. The cast of characters are superb, each with their own specific arc and unique personality, and that extends to the supporting cast too. The writing really shines through, with the LIPS system back in full force and revised for the newer hardware. It's a story of building confidence, and it really pays off to see the characters change as you go through the game. This is definitely why you buy it, because the action scenes aren't terrible, but they're fairly mindless all things considered, more along the lines of something like Sonic Unleashed's Warhog sections than like Bayonetta. That is a far graver insult than I intended. I promise they aren't as horrible as Sonic Unleashed. Anyway, the game also excels in the presentation department. Surprisingly, the Hedgehog Engine 2 of Sonic Forces infamy was deployed for this title, and it works far better than it did in that game. The depiction of steampunk Tokyo in this is nothing short of gorgeous. The character designs, most of them from Bleach creator Taits Kubo, make a fairly solid transition to 3D too. And you don't need me to tell you that the new Mugen series of Spiracle Fighter look rad as hell. As I mentioned, visual novels aren't really my thing, so I wasn't sure what to expect going into Sakura Wars. Thankfully, I ended up having a great time, and it's definitely something I'd recommend to Sega fans with a PS4 or visual novel fans. As with Judgment, I'd be very up for a port of the game to PC. Performance is generally solid here, but I do recall a few moments where it struggled during combat sequences, and a PC port would iron that out, as well as making the game more accessible. I'm going to keep this bit brief because I already made a full review of Yakuza Like a Dragon for Sega Driven. But to summarise, Like a Dragon shakes up the series in a way that, while not totally refined, manages to largely stick the landing. The new cast of characters, including fresh protagonist Ichiban Kasuga, work together brilliantly to make one of the most entertaining rosters of any Yakuza game I've played. Even just Ichiban himself is really endearing and gives this adventure an identity all its own, even before taking the major gameplay shift into account. The new RPG-style battles are as dynamic and entertaining as you'd hope a Yakuza game's combat would be, just in a different way. The party and job systems also allow for a slew of options in terms of offense, defense, and general tactics, and getting the upper hand on enemies through clever teamwork is plenty satisfying. The game's new setting in Yokohama, while maybe a little too big, offers a major departure from the cramped streets of Kamurocho and to some extent Sotenbori, but are more fun to explore than say Yakuza 3's Okinawa. Part-time hero and the returning side stories generally offer plenty of incentive to take your time and explore, as well as all the returning minigames such as the Sega Arcade, and even new stuff like the hilarious Dragon Kart. The music is as utterly fantastic as ever, and the storyline kept me hooked all the way through, albeit with a few twists that felt a little forced. Like a Dragon had a lot to prove, with a new protagonist and total gameplay overhaul. But fortunately, RGG Studio did a pretty stellar job for their first attempt, and I'm very interested to see how they refine the formula going forwards. I know a lot of Yakuza fans still are on the fence about the gameplay shift, but I don't think it's a shift to the game's detriment, and on the whole, Like a Dragon is well worth playing. I remember when I went on break at work one day, and had a message from Lewis at Sega Driven, telling me he'd handled the news story on Streets of Rage 4's announcement. And all I could think was, did he just say Streets of Rage 4? Indeed, Lizardcube and .mu got Sega's blessing to bring us Streets of Rage 4. And bloody hell, what a job they did. Streets of Rage 4 is probably the gold standard for modern beat-em-ups now. It's challenging, but not unfair, even more so after some patches reduce some slightly questionable armour on certain bosses, and each character offers a playstyle all their own, with newcomer Cherry being a definite highlight. I feel like I don't really need to hammer home how ridiculously good the game looks, but I'm gonna do it anyway. The art style suits Streets of Rage perfectly. Typically, it's a cause for caution when a Western studio gets its hand on a Japanese IP for rebooting purposes, but the way Lizardcube pushed forward Streets of Rage's aesthetic and narrative fits like a glove. The game itself is wickedly smooth, and the new combo system is extremely rewarding and simply fun. It feels satisfying to chain hits, to carry out crowd control, to use items efficiently, and when it all comes together in that perfect run, you feel unstoppable. It's also extremely replayable too. Not only does the familiarity garnered through repeat playthroughs inherently make the game more fun as you play, but you're rewarded with the characters of previous Streets of Rage titles, represented in all their pixelated glory. Some of them are absolutely broken when put into Streets of Rage 4, sure, but that in of itself makes for even more fun. I see people lament the fact that someone else had to do Streets of Rage 4 instead of Sega, but frankly I think this was the best outcome. A passionate and talented set of developers got to make a sequel truly worthy of the Streets of Rage name. This is no pale imitation, it's the real deal, and I couldn't be happier it finally happened. Yes, we're putting what is technically a fan game on here, because it's not like Ubisoft are going to do anything this cool with Rayman for the foreseeable future. The original Rayman is a game I played a few times on various play area demo kiosks, perhaps at a few after school clubs, but I never got that far into it. Nor did I have the desire to, as I grew up and heard horror stories about its difficulty. And so here comes along Rayman Redemption, to present us with a full overhauled remake of the Limbless One's first adventure. The game has been tweaked and reworked with quality of life features abound, such as more versatile movement from the outset, to make the game more welcoming to newcomers and old fans alike. That said, don't misinterpret this as being Rayman 1 easy mode. This is still an extremely brutal game at times, but one that's satisfying and rewarding to fight your way through, instead of just being archaic and frustrating. There's even totally new content here, small things such as skins for Rayman, and major additions such as an entirely new world. There's some wink and nods for Rayman fans, as you'd expect. I got a particular chuckle out of the levels based on the Rayman educational games, of all things. The quality is largely consistent throughout, even with the totally new stuff. It can still dip back into a few of its old trappings sometimes, largely with regards to some particularly naff boss fights, but it's still a satisfying experience all the same. The fact that this was largely made by one person, Raimani, was honestly staggering, and if this were official, I'd drop money on it in an instant. It's more polished than a lot of commercial releases I've played, and that's no mean feat. I actually enjoyed it so much that I almost 100% completed it. Just minus the boss rush. That's not happening. It really goes without saying, but if you're a fan of Rayman, you owe it to yourself to try out Rayman Redemption. Generally speaking, it's probably the single most impressive fan project I've ever seen materialise for any video game series this side of Sonic 3. Technically, this one's cheating a bit. I did actually try out Phantasy Star Online 2 many, oh so many years ago. I played it for about 3 hours and then never touched it again. Or any MMOs really. I tried Final Fantasy XIV, but that game is shit. What the hell are you Catboy people smoking? Anyway, that was the end of that. Or it was, until last year when Microsoft caught everyone off guard by announcing they were helping Sega finally bring PSO2 to the West, after all these years. But only in America at first, news that I reacted to with such finesse that Sega unfollowed me on Twitter for a while. My friend and PSO2 encyclopedia Kero, however, used this as an opportunity to get me into the Japanese version of the game. And this time, I played more than I did my first go around. To be precise, I played over 100 hours of it this time, most of that within 1 month. And then when the North American version actually came to Europe, and Steam for that matter, I did it all over again. Phantasy Star Online 2 is fantastic, an action-packed thrill ride of cosmic proportions. The core gameplay obviously varies depending on your class, but as a ranger, I was basically playing a character action third-person shooter. The Just Attack system, which rewards you for timed attacks, may not sound like much at first glance, but it's a great way of rewarding nuanced play, and something I'm very annoyed seems to be absent in the upcoming PSO2 New Genesis, hint hint Sega. Getting to grips with the different class systems, upgrading your skill trees and weapons, fighting bigger and bigger bosses, messing with mission gimmicks like ride gears and the AIS mech suits, and of course spending an absurd amount of time and in-game money customising your character. It's so good. The story is admittedly not something I took much interest in a lot of the time, but it certainly has its moments. I don't want to spoil too much for folks who haven't checked it out yet, but there's one story mission where the game actively turns the heads-up display mechanics on its head to play into the narrative, and it's such a cool fourth wall breaking moment that it made me sit up and think, oh holy shit, that's cool. I think it can be reasonably argued that the global version makes some questionable decisions with regards to localization, likely due to the sheer scale of a project like localizing PSO2, but it's nothing that should break the game for newcomers or indeed veterans. To get anecdotal, one of the funniest moments of the global version for me so far was putting a weapon skin on the in-game player store for over 80 million Meseta, mostly for a laugh. I then woke up the next day to find I suddenly had very deep pockets. Everyone say hello to Haruka. She's my cat girl OC that I use in RPGs nowadays. I definitely don't sound oh so sad saying that. Admittedly, I've dropped off PSO2 a bit. I still need to play for episode 5 and 6 on the global version, but it took up such a significant amount of my time this year, largely during the UK's COVID-19 lockdown, that I can't keep it off this list in good conscience. It's the best MMO I think I've ever played, and I'm cautiously excited for New Genesis. Just please put Just Attacks back in it, Sega. Please. Besides PSO2 and perhaps Minecraft, there may be only one game I played more of this year, and it's getting the nod here largely for that. In the span of the 2 or 3 months I played it before dropping off, it became my most played Switch game of all time, with a cool 200 hours clocked. For reference, I've played 300 hours of Sonic Mania on PC since that game launched. That's no mean feat. And while it's true that it somewhat wore out its welcome eventually, those first few months with Animal Crossing New Horizons were pretty damn magical. It's a relaxing experience for sure, and I avoided getting into the idea of min-maxing it. It felt more rewarding to watch my island slowly but surely build up into a personal haven, with altogether too many flowers, residential districts, an array of gardens, holidaying areas, and so forth. That extended to my house too. I don't think I've ever put as much effort into collecting furniture sets as I did the Sakura collection. Having an array of friends to play it with helped a lot too. One of my standout memories with the game was having pretty much the entirety of a friend's Discord server pile onto my island just so we could stand and watch the shooting stars go by for an hour or so. Animal Crossing soon became a melting pot for all of my different groups of friends, and it was plenty of fun. It just would have been more fun were the process of joining and leaving a friend's island not so torturously long. That and some puzzling omissions from previous games, such as Brewster's Coffee Shop, did lead me to eventually falling off the game, as I usually do with Animal Crossing anyway. But on the whole, I think it'd be remiss not to include it here somewhere, as it definitely carried me pretty significantly through lockdown, as I suspect was the case for many other people. Sometimes all you need is a quiet minute catching fish, or building a nice observatory area, or even just sit down in a virtual flower garden. Sometimes in Breath of the Wild I'll go on long cross-country treks just to take in the sights, and Animal Crossing is that sort of mentality exemplified in a game. Man, after a game as cozy and relaxing as Animal Crossing, you know what we need? The most utterly furious, bloodthirsty, heart-pounding game I think I've ever played. That sounds about right. Doom Eternal is a bloody masterpiece of FPS action. Quite literally so. I thought Doom 2016 was a magnificent game, and I genuinely wasn't sure how much more they could do to build on that. So the fact Eternal makes it look rather quaint by comparison is staggering. Everything's faster and hits harder, there's a larger selection of demons to shoot in the face, the levels are utterly gargantuan and fun to explore, and the game offers proper boss fights that put up brutal challenges that are so rewarding to surmount. And yes, that includes the Marauders. Upgrading the Doomslayer into a lightning-fast, gun-toting parkour machine is just one part of the puzzle, but most of your progression in this game comes from just learning the delicate balance of the gameplay. Essentially, you're taking part in a macabre ballet recital. In the original game, you couldn't just hide from enemies, you had to be constantly moving. Here, that's obviously still true, but now it's not enough to just be moving either. You've got to be constantly watching your resources, knowing specifically when and how to fill them efficiently, all while making things die and making sure you don't die, and doing it as stylishly as possible, of course. It's exhilarating to say the least. The parkour-style platforming elements got somewhat of a mixed reaction from many, but they were one of my favourite additions made. It added a whole extra dimension to the usual explorative nature of Doom, and doing it all as fast as possible plays into the rollercoaster feeling Eternal provides. I've never played Metroid Prime admittedly, but I do know that right now I would kill for an id-developed Metroid game. In the end, I actually went back and found every collectible in the game, something I didn't bother doing in Doom 2016, because I just wanted to keep playing. Even messing around with the cheats is a great time when you just want to play mindlessly, or even challenge yourself even more with something like Famine Mode. I've yet to check out the Ancient Gods Part 1 DLC admittedly, as my budget's a bit tight at the minute, but talking purely about the base package, Doom Eternal is easily 2020's best game for me. It's a game that boasts the fact it's a game proudly, even with the greater focus on lore than previously. It's not overly concerned with being mature or pretentious, it's in your face, it's gory, and it's too much fun. And sometimes, that's all I want. As I mentioned at the start of the video, I did really play a lot of games this year. Like, a lot. So I wanted to quickly mention some other titles that just missed the main list. Cotton 2 is an extremely fun Sega Saturn shmup with an interesting take on special moves, using fighting game command inputs. But there's a mode that lets you map all of these to a button, and while it's pretty broken, it sure is entertaining. I also played Death Smiles for the first time. I appreciate this game for being a more welcoming introduction to shmups than other games in the genre I've played, even if it drops all pretense once the final level starts. Konami Crazy Racers has some rather brutal AI at times, and what I can only describe as questionable collision on certain tracks, but on the whole it's an extremely solid alternative to the GBA's own Mario Kart Super Circuit, and it gets at least an 11 out of 10 for having Pastel in it. I don't make the rules. Except when I do. Bubble Symphony is like if you packed all the world's happiness into a video game. It's probably the finest take on the game's given formula, and it's just a great time. Elevator Action Returns just barely missed the main list. This action-packed run and gun is another Saturn highlight, and well worth a look if you've not had a chance to try it. Thunder Force 5 is simply excellent. I've still not managed to beat it, but I love what I've played. I think my reaction to the fight against the upgraded Rhynex from Thunder Force 4 will forever be one of my favourite stream moments. There's a lot more I could list here, but I'd be capturing footage for hours, so I'll leave it there. Now I did say Doom Eternal was 2020's best game, but that clearly means there's one other not 2020 game that has pipped it to the top of this list. Or rather I should say, peepoed it to the top of this list. Please put down the glass bottle. When I was a kid, the GameCube quickly became my main console. I had a PS2 as well, but I always saw it as the worst system, because the game library always seemed more focused to older gamers, the sorts of things I wasn't interested in. This is partially because I got given crap games, and partially because European game distribution at the time was dog shit. But there's one game I now really wish I'd had for my PS2 back in the day, and after playing it in April, it's wound up being my favourite game out of all the ones I played this year. Everyone, this is Ape Escape 3. Giving any kind of nuanced rundown of Ape Escape 3 here is somewhat hard, because off the top of my head, I really struggled to think of things I don't like about this game. It was a real joy from beginning to end. The level design is superb, the slew of locations are colourful and varied, the controls work great, the sense of exploration and freedom you feel while playing are totally on point for the kind of collectathon I enjoy, since that's essentially what we've got here. There's so many ways to approach each level with the slew of gadgets you have at your disposal, and that kind of versatility is what I love, and each level feels so expansive too. Normally I'd groan at a game forcing revisits of past stages just for the true ending, but here it meant I got to go back and find new areas with my upgraded toolkit, and that was a lot of fun in of itself. It's not even just about the monkeys either, there's other aspects, such as filming all the different movies so you can watch through them later. It's got charm in spades. Even on the side, there is an entire Metal Gear Solid parody in here, and it is brilliantly done. There's obviously a few moments where I think the game ever so slightly misses the mark with, say, an obtuse or technically awkward objective, but these moments are so few and far between, and ultimately just end up being nitpicking. Even the car sections, which are fairly baffling at first, can be plenty of speedy fun once you wrangle those controls, and the boss fights are pretty great too. Soichi Terada's soundtrack is simply incredible. The character designs are absolutely perfect across the board, and just, man, this is such a ridiculously wonderful video game that I can't believe it took me so long to play it. I suppose it's weird that I skipped right to Ape Escape 3. I still haven't played the other games yet, but it's definitely on my to-do list. But if you've not played Ape Escape 3 and you love 3D platformers or collectathons in any capacity, I implore you to check out what is easily the best first-party Sony title I've ever played. It's my game of the year for 2020. And remember, Wild West Kid for life. And so, that was my games of the year for 2020. Let's hope that 2021 is a better year in general. And who knows, maybe the next 3D Sonic game will actually make it onto next year's list. No, it won't. No, it won't. Take care, everybody.